Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well and hope you are having a wonderful weekend. Don't worry, the country is in safe hands because, as we all know, Keir Starmer packed up work at 6 o'clock yesterday, but Angela Rayner is looking after everything. So sleep well and don't worry about anything at all. Today, Labour announced they're going to scrap the Rwanda plan. How is this going to affect things? If you've been watching the news, you'll be aware that migrants across the channel were celebrating when the election was called because, with no prospect of being deported to Rwanda, then they are all going to be heading for the UK en masse. It will be interesting to see how they handle things over the next few weeks and months after all of their posturing with absolutely no plan whatsoever, no answers to anything, none of them, nothing apart from drivel, of course. They're definitely going to be heading here en masse. Without passports, where do we deport them to? We can't deport them anywhere, really. Under our current rules, there isn't much that we can do. Will Labour simply give a mass amnesty, move them out the hotels? Angela Rayner has already said that she's going to spread them around the country evenly, so they'll be coming to a hotel or house near you. Obviously, they'll be given priority to people like you and I. We know that, don't we? And the problem will only get worse. Unfortunately, it's going to get much, much worse before it gets any better. I believe that we all knew that. Keep in mind that this government was elected on a 33% share of the vote. They got nearly 1 million votes less than Jeremy Corbyn's disastrous election in 2019. And they and the left wing media who panders to them are calling it a landslide. This is not a landslide. This is a catastrophic collapse of the Conservative vote. In fact, Labour's share of the vote hasn't really gone up. And from where the polls were predicting there would be, they are as much as 15% lower than what the polls were predicting, which again raises the question about how these polls were conducted and why the media was so intent on continually pushing this. Labour are in for a landslide with 48% of the vote for months. It's only in the last 3 or 4 weeks that the polls were coming down where Labour was concerned, because there was irrefutable evidence that they were not polling anywhere near that much. I did promise yesterday, I was asked about proportional representation. I have scheduled a video to cover it, but under PR, the share of votes would have been completely different, because effectively parties would poll in line with their share of the vote. As it is now with our first past the post, we have a Labour government that 60%, 67% of those who voted do not want, and 80% of those eligible to vote did not vote for. This is not a day of celebrating democracy. It is a day or an event where we can see just how terrible our electoral system is and how the two-party system has failed us. And now, despite the fact that the vast majority of people in this country never voted for mass immigration, never voted for all of these laws that have been thrust upon us, are now facing the prospect of the most disastrous cabinet in the history of our democracy being in charge and pushing the most ridiculous laws upon the British people. we run the risk of facing a blasphemy laws being pushed on us, which will mean that the majority of people will not be able to express their opinion, but certain minorities will be able to continue to behave exactly as they want. And thanks to police commissioners up and down the country who are political and not about law and order, they will continue to pander to politics, and they'll be more concerned about their police officers posting on TikToks and pandering to supporters of terrorism rather than fighting crime. This is a truly shameful and terrifying situation that we are finding ourselves in, and they haven't even started yet. Just look at the cabinet. Look up when Rachel Reeves was questioned about what a woman is. Look up how Keir Starmer responded when he was asked about it. Look up how David Lammy accused people who disagreed with his point of view of horrendous associations. The names he has called leaders of other countries. How is he qualified? How can he function as a foreign minister? What would happen? How would Lammy be able to deal with a meeting with the Israeli foreign minister in light of the way that he speaks about Israel? Really are not qualified to be leaders of the United Kingdom. And it will be absolutely disastrous. Let me just take a look here. Good evening, Dave. I hope you are well, David. And Starmer will have a right on his hands. Yes, I believe that we will see some sites that have not been seen for decades, and that will be very, very soon. Rachel Reeves has already laid the foundations to basically find ways to extract more money from the people. We know that in their manifesto, most of their spending plans were intentionally omitted. Throughout the election, the entire cabinet and all of the figureheads in Labour were effectively sworn to secrecy about anything to do with their spending plans. They did not divulge one single policy. West Streeting allegedly has begun negotiations with junior doctors who are demanding 35%, an increase of 35% amongst other things. Most people in the NHS is not just about money, it's about working conditions as well. And he's going to negotiate with them, using the words of Keir Starmer. How is he going to negotiate with them when their manifesto indicated that they have not set aside a single penny to pay them any increase whatsoever? What's he going to do? Is he going to negotiate, or is he just going to tell them that they're not going to receive any pay rise whatsoever? And if he does agree to any pay rise, where's the money coming from? The same question repeats itself with every single thing they are planning to do. Where is the money coming from? They have said that they will not increase income tax, national insurance, or VAT, unless, of course, circumstances dictate otherwise, that much as they didn't want to and promised that they wouldn't, they have no choice because Liz Truss crashed the economy. No mention of Andrew Bailey by anybody who mentions when the economy took a tumble and his treacherous actions the night before the famous budget. But that's another topic. Back to the Rwanda plan. It was always a ridiculous plan. Was it simply a smokescreen to divert our attention from the fact that while Sunak was messing around insulting our intelligence about some ridiculous plan to pack migrants off to Rwanda, over 2.5 million people arrived here legally. That's just in 2 years. That's the gross total, 2.6 million just in the last 2 years. When the Conservatives first came back into power in 2010, Dave Cameron promised to get it down from hundreds of thousands to tens of thousands. We then went. We then saw Dave Cameron, along with the treacherous turncoat Nick Clegg, who sold his soul the minute he got a whiff of number 10. Then in 2015, was it, at the next election, Dave Cameron won a majority and Nick Clegg just went off to reap the rewards for his treachery in industry, basically reward from the globalists for his service to globalism. And since then, immigration has been rising through Liz Truss, through oh, crikey, her name's gone from my head now. Anyway, who was the one after Dave Cameron's totally gone? She's so irrelevant. Theresa May, that's it, sorry. And then, of course, then there was Boris. Boris probably ranks as the greatest traitor to this country ever. He held the keys to such a prosperous future, and he sold out in every single way possible, on Brexit, on net zero, on farming, on fishing. Constitutionally, he basically gave away Northern Ireland without even a shot being fired. He effectively destroyed this country, and we are now going to endure the damage that this bunch of clowns are going to do to this country as a result of what Boris did before, because things could have been so different now. Grand Mufti Cameron is a traitor. Absolutely, absolutely. And why on earth would Rishi Sunak bring Cameron back at this stage, or within the last year or so, as Foreign Secretary, when he's not even accountable in Parliament, after what he did, is yet another insult. In today's Telegraph, Suella Braverman actually made a seething attack on Rishi Sunak and said that the Conservatives, quite rightly, that the Conservatives deserved what happened to them because they have taken the British public for fools. 14 years of this constant lying, whilst they have been selling our country off to the globalists for their own benefit. Is Rishi Sunak going to suffer the consequences of what he's done, not just in the last 2 years, but even his actions before as Chancellor? Will Boris be suffering as a result of his behaviour? He's left the office and he's off making a fortune on the back of being the ex-Prime Minister. He's not the one that is at the back of the queue for housing, for medical treatment, for his children to attend schools, or anything else. It is everyday people who are paying the price for their treachery, and it will only get worse, much, much worse. Unfortunately, we have to go through this process. We go through this once every generation because eventually people get curious. They forget how destructive the Labour Party is, and they get elected back in. And by the time they leave, they cause irreparable damage. We seem to go through the same cycle again and again. It's just unfortunate that over the last few years, we've not even had a Conservative government in power. There are no Conservatives. There is no left and right. They are just globalists, and they will sell their souls to keep their paymasters happy. And as was described recently by Nigel Farage, we have not elected prime ministers and ministers, we have elected middle managers. The CEOs and the board are faceless people behind the scenes, pulling the strings, and we don't even know for the main part who they are. And if we do speak up about them, then we normally encounter problems because they are merciless. And anybody who does manage to put up an effective fight against the globalists will normally suffer the consequences because they will stop at nothing to achieve their aims. Globally, how many people are we talking about? Maybe 100,000, 200,000. It's not that many. And they control the entire world, and they are destroying the entire world. They intend to destroy cultures, borders, to destroy everything because they are so evil, and all they care about is their own agenda, and they will achieve it at any cost to anyone because we are all dispensable to them. Just have a look at the questions here. At least that Val Galloway lost his seat. He's a serious threat to public safety and security. He is indeed, quite rightly so, but unfortunately, he was elected out of office, but we do have 5 people who were elected on the Gaza ticket, even though through their campaign they purported to be standing for their entire community and the usual tripe. Once elected, they have revealed their hand, and this is just the thin end of the wedge. It will get worse, and as we have been warned, within a decade we will have some serious partisan problems in our parliament. Indeed, I believe that once we have a certain amount of these fanatics in parliament, I expect them to all defect to a new party, and then we will have a serious problem. I do wonder how naive and reckless people like the Green Party are, allowing themselves to be used as a vehicle for these people to enter Parliament, because it's certainly nothing to do with green issues, nothing whatsoever. But this is a threat, and that threat will accelerate as time goes by. And one day we will wake up and we will be facing the greatest threat to our democracy and our way of life that we have ever seen before. Now, what do we got here? When will people wake up? It's a big pharma and the WEF that are pulling the devil's horns. Yes, I'm afraid so. I'm afraid so. And it's really, really worrying. Now we face the following problem. We have thousands and thousands of these illegal immigrants languishing in hotels, paid for by everybody else. Isn't it no wonder that our taxes are so high? And that number will only increase. Labour have absolutely no plans to move them to secure accommodation. So these people who have arrived here illegally, they are criminals. Every single person landing here on a boat is a criminal. They have broken the law entering this country illegally. And yet they are rewarded by accommodation in hotels, money to live, trips out, a new phone, you name it, they get it. But you or I wouldn't get a look in compared to what they get. And yet anybody who approaches any of these hotels, anybody who wants to look into who is there, what is going on, always gets a hostile response. They are so secretive about what they're doing, who they have there, and what the plan is. That in itself raises questions and should be worrying to everyone, and yet nobody says a word. It seems that the entire media is under the control of the same people, and they are all desperate to send out the same message, and they are all desperate and will go to any lengths to silence anyone who speaks out or anyone who can inform people en masse about what is going on. You can get away with it speaking to small numbers if you don't make a big impact. But if you do make an impact and people begin to listen, they'll come for you and they'll do anything to discredit you or put you down or worse. And I do believe that there are examples of people who have been dealt a very evil hand for whatever reason. And at this point, certainly online, I wouldn't even name them. But there are people out there who have been set up in the most sinister way for whatever reason. There are, without a shadow of a doubt, dark forces at play here. And unfortunately, they are causing irreparable damage to our country because we will be stuck with these people and they have absolutely no respect for our country. Having spoken to people who work in housing, for example, these people scream with entitlement that they need bigger houses, that they need this, that they must have that. And in the end, they pander to the people who scream the most. And these people who don't deserve it are actually jumping the queue, and people who were born and bred here are being overlooked. And if they dare to say anything, they're actually punished for speaking up about it. This is where we are in this country at the moment, and indeed throughout Europe. And Europe has begun to wake up to this, and that terrifies them, seriously terrifies them. Let's see what happens tomorrow with the second round. I believe it's tomorrow, the second round of the elections in France. Macron, as you know, spat his dummy out after the European elections, called a snap election, and his share of the vote literally just collapsed. There is a very, very strong possibility that Marine Le Pen could win, and we'll have to see what she will do if she does win. Will she actually set out to restore law and order in France, because Paris is having some really serious problems with social unrest, or will she back off a little bit, like the Italian president? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. You've only got to look at what's happening to Tommy Robinson to see that is true. Yes, he got. They drummed up a charge against him back last year so that he couldn't go to any protests in London through the height of the Gaza protests and nutters running around London with their flags until that was dropped, and that was St George's Day, wasn't it? Then he had issues when he went over to Canada. They just don't stop. Obviously, there are problems with anybody in politics if they openly support him. But having said that, he has massive support, and the support for him is only growing. And throughout Europe, despite for all their efforts to try and silence people who have had enough, their voices are getting louder, their numbers are swelling, and they will not be able to control them, bully them, or silence them for any longer, because there are just too many of them and their voices are just too loud. Fill you in. What's happening to Tommy apart from him grifting boomers to keep him in powder? Is that, who do you refer to by Tommy? Are you referring to Tommy Robinson? Keep him, well, he's not in power anywhere, is he? If it's him, not sure. but we'll have to see what's going to happen. I think we need to wait and see what happens in France first. Germany has quietly turned significantly to the right. They are actually deporting people quietly. They are at a turning point, and the concern is that historically Europe doesn't just simply rein back its move to the left. It normally swings to the right, the far right. And if people think just wanting to supporting Brexit or wanting to reduce mass immigration is far right, they'll have another thing coming when we actually see what right wing extremism really is, because people have had enough and the consequences could be catastrophic for the whole of Europe. Uh, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. I don't know any more than what I've said. I don't really sort of take too much interest in that. I'm more concerned about what's actually happening in with people who are in office or could be in office, or as in the case recently, those who are being thrown out of office. It was the night of the long knives, wasn't it? After the election, so many people were kicked out. So many members of the former cabinet lost their seats. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Penny Mordaunt, Grant Shapps, all gone, all out. But then there were other surprises. For example, when Jess Phillips was trying to make her acceptance speech after winning, she was heckled and bullied and abused by other extremists who they have pandered to, and they are now going to pay the price because they've laid the foundations for a lot of civil unrest. We haven't even heard from the unions yet, who have been conspicuous by their absence for the last few months. And I have no doubt that now Labour are in power, the unions will appear and begin to make demands on the Labour Party. With the larger numbers, because of the amount of seats that they have, there is also a real and present danger that the Labour Party could deteriorate into civil war between the far left and the left, or the left and the middle, or whichever you want to call it, Corbynistas and Blairites. And we have a cabinet that actually doesn't have a plan and doesn't know what they are doing about anything. All of their plans are based on uh, ignorance, lies, treachery, or just politics of envy and resentment, and that doesn't go very far. They will not raise much from the super rich. They will not raise much from the non-doms because they just simply will refuse to pay and move elsewhere. They will discourage investment into this country, and ultimately we are back to the example where you have a wealthy person paying a percentage and people all the way down on lower and lower incomes paying a percentage, and then the people at the bottom paying the least complain the most. And if the person at the top who actually pays the most decides to abandon this country, suddenly things get so much worse for everybody else because they still contribute a lot to this country. So, how that pans out, I don't know. We'll have to see. It is a very difficult one because most of these people are free to just move around. Why would they stay here and be open to financial abuse from a resentful and spiteful Labour Party when they can simply move to another country or just move their base to Dubai where there's zero income tax? Why would they be paying a fortune here? So, how that will work, that remains to be seen. They have never categorically denied making changes to capital gains tax, or indeed imposing capital gains tax on private residences. The answers they gave appear to have ruled it out, but they didn't. The problem is that all of our problems will become exponentially worse because the this explosion in mass immigration will continue, and there is absolutely no way that Keir Starmer and his cabinet will be able to stop anything. I don't see them actually being able to implement a single effective policy or anything that does require strength of character and strength of conviction, because they are just not capable of it. Everything will simply be knee jerk politics to pander to those who shout the most, to the mob, to the resentful. They will seek out and target those who can, those who will, and those who do, to keep happy those who can't, and those who don't, and those who won't. That is a recipe for social and economic destruction. And this will happen before our eyes. It will be unveiled over the next year or two. I really, really don't believe that they will last 5 years or four or even three, because their motives and their intentions are so toxic and so undemocratic that the people, the vast majority of people who do not want them, who are already at the end of their tether, will snap and they will have to go. I think the powers that be will make sure reform never gets in. Look at what's happened over the last few weeks and months. They definitely had a campaign against reform. Even so, we did very well. We came second in 98 seats, I believe. 98. So they may have attempted to make us irrelevant. They may have attempted to make us appear to be less than what we were in their polls, in the way that they questioned the polls and reported them, not to mention all of the treachery and all of the staged events to try to discredit reform. But ultimately, coming second in 98 seats is huge, absolutely huge. And that is an election where the vast majority of the electorate was uninspired, and more people, so many people, more people than ever, stayed at home. On election night, when I was looking through the spoilt ballots, it was quite interesting, actually, and there were quite a lot of them. So many people are absolutely disillusioned and had enough. What the future holds, I don't know how it will go, but now that there are five now in Parliament, things have changed. There is a foothold, and it is more significant than it appears. And that is under our first past the post electoral system. We need to look at changing it. It's not going to be easy. Having said that, there are people in the other parties who do support it, so it's not anything that could be ruled out. Obviously, the Lib Dems have also got the largest amount of seats they've had in years or decades, and they support PR. So it may be possible that it could be tabled and given more time than it would have been previously. Whether it will get through or not, that's another matter. I believe that that's a real uphill struggle to change the way that our electoral system works. It is designed by the two, for the two, to keep the two in power and to keep everybody out. And they're not about to give that up just like that. And effectively, whichever one you vote for, just in the same way as the vast majority of people, they didn't vote for the ones that they want, they voted for the one that they disliked the least at this moment in time. And this is not a Labour victory in any way, shape, or form. It's shameful to even call it a victory. This is a monumental loss by the Conservatives, and they are responsible for our country being saddled with these toxic amateurs who are going to cause untold damage to our country. But for the moment, there isn't much that we can do about it apart from being prepared to fight back while we can speak up, because their first priority would be to erode our rights even further, to the point where we won't be able to speak out, so that speaking against them will effectively be illegal one way or another under some ridiculous law. Uh, can't say politics will be boring now with Nigel getting a seat. No, absolutely no, no way. Obviously, um, I believe that with Nigel and Richard and Rupert Lowe in the Houses of Parliament, that it is going to, and Lee Anderson, of course, it is going to be interesting. They are definitely a formidable force, and for those who think that these 4, 5 with the guy from Basildon, I've forgotten his name, but he's new. But these 4 guys, um, they can out talk and out argue anyone in the Houses of Parliament. And when he is pushed, Keir Starmer will never be able to out argue them ever. He cannot answer anything when he is cornered. All he does is go into a daze and just stare into thin air like a rabbit in the headlights. That's all he does. He is incapable of making decisions. He is incapable of being a strong and dynamic and loyal prime minister. In his own words, he prefers Davos to Westminster. That alone should have been a red flag to everyone. Who on earth would want to vote for a man? Is he a man? I'm not sure about genders here, but who would want to vote for a person who prefers Davos to Westminster? They're the seat, the heart of their own country and democracy. Add to that Emily Thornberry's contempt for our flag. Add to that Angela Rayner's just lack of knowledge about anything whatsoever. And we do have quite a dangerous cocktail here. So I would say it will be interesting to see what's going to happen. But at the same time, it's terrifying, because whatever they do will invariably be damaging to this country. And I only hope that the damage that they do will not be permanent, but in many ways it will be, because they will flood the country with people and give them amnesty and give them the right to vote, just to import votes for the next election. Because the vast majority of seats that the Labour Party won on Thursday, they won with a very small majority. Very small majority. In some cases, a slither. And at the next election, if and when things change, it is more than likely that the Labour Party will suffer the same fate as the Conservatives suffered this Thursday, and they will lose dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of seats in one go. On this occasion, it was perfectly clear that this would happen because, on the one hand, there was the Conservative Party with a leader with no mandate who's let this country down and was not wanted at all. And the alternative was the Reform Party in its infancy, who has grown out of nowhere to become the greatest threat to the political status quo in history. That took them by surprise. How that will work out over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, in which way, I don't know. We'll have to see. Definitely, there is a force to be reckoned with, and that force will grow. It will get stronger, and it will be a threat to them. Will the Conservative Party recover? I don't know. From where they are, when and how and what they do, that remains to be seen. There was crazy woke stuff being taught in schools under the Tories. Imagine the confusing things that they will be taught about under Labour. Yes. Who would have ever thought that a Tory government would preside over children of 8, 9, and 10 being taught the obscene things that they have been taught in the manner that they've been taught? Who would have thought that this would happen in the United Kingdom, and that people would go along with it even if they weren't happy with it? And in some cases, those who objected to it found themselves to be at the sharp end of the police or social services, um, or any other institution which it represents children. Who would have ever thought? And now, with this lot, they will literally take this country on a slippery slope to moral chaos. Um, Birmingham and Manchester, under this lot, will simply become Sodom and Gomorrah, effectively. And just as then they were waging war against certain tribes, the same thing will be happening now. History repeating itself, I'm afraid. It's not looking good. And what concerns me is that as we stand now, 8% of the population has arrived here just in the last 5 years. If you do look at the demographics, from 97, our country went off on a tangent that literally will seal its doom unless somebody has the courage and the strength of character and the moral compass to reverse this trend. But with regards to the migrants that are here, the illegal ones, and those who are yet to come, what do we do with them? If we can't deport them because they don't have a passport, what do we do with them? What do you suggest that we do with these people who are here illegally? Effectively, they're here to just take whatever they can get, by hook or by crook. There is no varnishing this. The reality is that they are here to take whatever they can from this country, because the word is out. It's out on TikTok, it's out all over the web that the UK is a soft touch. The people in the UK are mugs. You arrive there illegally, you give the authorities a cock and bull story, you kick off, they'll put you in a hotel, they'll give you a phone, they'll give you money. As soon as they arrive, do you not think that they are not on their phones telling all of their friends, get here, say this, do that, do this, do that, and you could be in the hotel room next door to me, all paid off by Muggins, the British taxpayer, who is paying the highest rate of tax for 70 years. The British public, who has had 9 quarters of negative growth per capita, 9 quarters of the average person in the UK getting poorer. The worst decade for growth in 70 years. The longest NHS waiting lists for 70 years. And the numbers on the waiting list of the NHS are actually going up, not just by a few thousand, but by hundreds of thousands every week. It was 7.5 million, or just over a week ago. And I think the last time I had an update, it had gone up to 7.7 or 7.8 million on the waiting list. It is the numbers. We just cannot cope with the numbers. And this lot are going to launch a war on independent schools. That's assuming that they will be legally allowed to, because it seems that it contravenes human rights and the ECHR could stop them. And as we all know, Keir Starmer is a good little ECHR puppet. But should they be able to proceed with this, we know already that over 100,000 pupils will be taken out of independent schools by September. Where are they going to go? And who's going to pay for them? And has anybody worked out how much 100,000 times 5 or 6,000 per pupil per year, which it would cost the state to educate them, minus 100,000 fees, plus VAT, or rather VAT not being collected on those 100,000, minus all of the tax and national insurance that from the teachers in independent schools, ancillary staff, and so on and so on and so on. It takes, I believe it has been calculated that the point where they go from making a profit, or actually raising money with this policy against independent schools, to it actually costing them, is somewhere between 100 to 150,000 pupils. And if they can go ahead with it, and they do go ahead with it, I believe that they'll probably reach that point at some point in the new year. It won't be long, and then they would have destroyed many independent schools and created a net loss, little more than just an exercise of malicious resentment against anything that is good in this country. Just take a look at your questions and see what you have to say. Let's have a look. Sorry, I forgot to pop them on screen. I predict that by the time Labour have served their term, 30% of the population will be newcomers. Yes, that's not unrealistic, actually. Not unrealistic if you think that 8% has just arrived in the last 5 years. And I forgot what the figures are of those who have arrived since 2010, let alone since 97. I was supposed to have my stent changed in my kidney in May. My bladder cancer has come back 3 times. I have not even had a checkup for 8 months. I'm sorry to hear that, David, but one thing I do know from one of the other candidates who works in the NHS, that our diagnosis and treatment of cancer is now one of the worst in Europe, and it is getting worse. And unless something drastic is done, the NHS in its current format just won't be here in 5 or 10 years. It just can't. It is already hanging on by a thread in every single way. So what these people will do about it, I really, really don't know. But the numbers increasing and adding to the strain just make things worse. We should be controlling migration ruthlessly. We need smart migration. We can have enough numbers to fill our key positions, because, as I've said previously, around 5 to 600,000 people leave this country every year. So if we had net migration of 0, that would mean that 5 to 600,000 people come here. But those 5 to 600,000 must be chosen very, very carefully. Then they would be enough to actually service our NHS and all of our essential services. But we can't just allow them to come here randomly. We need to have more control. We need to exercise firm control of immigration, and we need to ensure that we have firm rules and that we adhere to those rules. At the moment, it just seems to be total chaos, and these people who are coming here illegally will only increase. I don't know how it will pan out over the next year or two, because if, and I say if, they make the reckless decision to give all the illegal migrants who are here amnesty, they are basically sending out a message to the world that the floodgates in the UK are open and that we have absolutely no borders, and countries without borders are no longer countries. At least they ain't got Diane Abacus in charge of the maths anymore. Well, yes, yeah, I have thought of that before. I can't remember what the situation was. It may have been Jeremy Hunt's budget, and it did cross my mind. Who was his maths teacher? Was it Diane Abbott? And fingers crossed, I now have a date on the 15th to have my op. I hope it don't get cancelled again. I sincerely hope not, David, and I hope that it all goes well. I don't know what to say in these situations, and it's these issues like yours that bother me the most with regards to the NHS. It's not the fault of the nurses or the doctors, but the NHS is not only is it struggling with the numbers, but it is also being fleeced by private industry, which is siphoning off millions from it in every way, shape, or form. So we need to address that. We need to take steps to improve staff retention, medical staff retention. We need to take steps to attract medical staff back into the NHS. We need to take steps to bring medical staff through education, nurses and doctors, and make it attractive to them. And we must keep the numbers down. We must control the numbers, because invariably those who arrive will shout the most and they will be seen before you. No matter how anybody tries to sell it to you, that is the reality. What have we got here? Feel for you there, David. In the same boat myself. The cancer is under control, but kidney down to 32 and cannot have a stent. But each day is a bonus. I'm so sorry to hear that. I really, really am. Diane Abbott was kicked for racism when she wasn't even racist, in my opinion. I think that whether I agree with her politically or not is irrelevant. We should have disagreement. If we are going to have diversity, it should be diversity in our policies, diversity in our beliefs, diversity in our opinions, and we should be able to express those freely without being condemned for it. That is not the diversity that we have, because anybody who contradicts the narrative too much suffers the consequences. What we do have is the diversity that Trevor Phillips championed back in the 70s and 80s, and he is on the record stating that he regrets championing multiculturalism and that it doesn't work. There was a program, it was actually on BBC, called The Things We Think About Race But Don't Say. I think that was what it was called. It was shown the once. It's never been shown again, and you can't find it anywhere. I do have it. I can't remember how I got it, but I do have it. Can't post it anywhere because it will be taken down. But ultimately, the man who championed multiculturalism in this country is on the record saying that it has failed, and failed abysmally. I could have actually given an example of how or why that fails, and that example is what happened to Yugoslavia. And I see not just the UK, but I see Europe ultimately becoming another Yugoslavia, and it will end very, very badly. And that really worries me. Powerbank, I take cannabis oil, mate. It was not for that, I'd be dead. Paolo, how does that help? Does it help with the pain? Does it help you in other ways? And is this legal? Can you buy it legally in the shops, or do you have to get it from dubious sources online? I don't know too much about it, but I would like to hear more about it. And perhaps you could, at some point, maybe we could even, have a chat about it, because I'd like to know exactly what you're going through, what the process is, what you're doing about it, how you're being treated or not treated, because people need to know. It's quite tragic that we had the best health service in the world, and it is being abused so much that it is at risk of collapsing before our eyes. And that's really sad. Didn't they have Diane lined up for the treasury? Ultimately, I think I lost my chain of thought. Regardless of, yes, I did. Regardless of whether I agree with her or not, I think that the way she was treated over the last year, if she did something wrong, a decision should have been made one way or the other. Fine, fair enough. That's not for me to say. But I think that she was treated very, very badly. And ultimately, it doesn't set a good example. What does it say about the Labour Party or the leadership that they treat somebody who is effectively part of the Labour hierarchy, being an MP for so many years, to treat her so badly was not right. And the shame is on the party. It reflects on them. Migrants would now be upgraded from small boats to flying in with the flag BA. Possibly, I think that it depends what happens with the election tomorrow in France. That wouldn't it be ironic if the Labour Party in the UK, who pander to the left, who are beneath the surface Remoaners, if their skin is saved by Marine Le Pen, who will actually take action, possibly against migration? Or will the case be that if Marine Le Pen does get in, migrants who I would expect, going by the behaviour and the characteristics of the Labour Party, I expect them to be coming in on Townsend, Torres and ferries, who have had to reroute their ferries in case they get rammed by a dinghy, which is catastrophic. Will those ferries be full of Remoaners being deported by Marine Le Pen? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But all I can say is the numbers will go up. And yes, they may very well stop coming on dinghies because they'll be able to come in on safer routes without putting their lives at risk. And when they get here, the Labour Party are going to welcome them, give them amnesty. Angela Rayner is going to divide them up equally around the country, apart from the fact that they probably won't be putting them anywhere near they are, or anywhere near Gary Lineker, or anywhere near any of the party donors, I would imagine, but I could be wrong. So the numbers will increase and it's going to be catastrophic. Multiculture has failed purely due to numbers. I think that no matter what happens, when you create a multicultural society and you create these parallel cultures, it is always doomed to fail. Different cultures uh, evolve differently. Some become uh, more toxic than others, but ultimately it is catastrophic to have a policy. This is not about people um, cutting ties with who they are or where they've come from or anything along those lines. It is about nurturing uh, a national culture where anybody who comes here is proud to be here, proud to be British, and proud of Great Britain. But when we have our own population basically criticizing the UK, putting the country down, putting our flags down, um, making people here ashamed of their race, their background, our history, that is a recipe for catastrophe without a shadow of a doubt. Uh, no, it's not legal cannabis kills. No, it's not legal. Cannabis kills cancer cells and helps to stop spread. And yes, it helps with the pain. I have actually read articles um, that natural hemp has amazing healing properties. Um, and I then have to ask the question, why has that been inhibited from being used more? Is that because of its association with the smoking side of things or whatever it is? Or is that anything to do with the pharmaceuticals? What do you think? Uh, Paolo, the wife uses cannabis oil for pain. She buys it legally from somewhere. She is happy with the results. Uh, Having said that, I do believe that there are people who've actually been arrested in places like Dubai for cannabis oil. Um, so I don't really know too much about it or how it works. It is about time someone sued Merkel for the illegal immigrant problem. The whole of Europe is suffering. Well, invariably, she will get away with it, but the damage is done. Uh, Entire continent struggling under the pressure of all of these people. And as I said, it will be difficult to work out what will be done when the masses decide enough is enough, which is invariably what is now happening. And despite the best effort of the woke left, people are at the end of their tether. They are at the end of their tether in this country. And as I said, this so called landslide is just 33% of the population. It is literally insulting our intelligence for them to call this a landslide victory. It is not a landslide victory, it is a loss, like an avalanche, for the Conservatives. And it is the Conservatives who have put these dangerous, toxic, malicious, destructive people at the helm of our great nation. And I fear that they will cause a lot of more damage before they are finally booted out. And in the meantime, thanks to this nonsense about Rwanda, uh, Sunak used it as a smokescreen for the last 2 years so that he could keep us hanging on that Rwanda's going to sort things out when he didn't deal with legal migration. And we have now hundreds of thousands of people who would be very, very difficult to deport because we just don't know where they've come from. And even if we did, as Sunak on that occasion, he was correct in the debate with Starmer when he said to him, "How are you going to deport them and where to? Are you going to sit down and negotiate with the Ayatollah, with the Taliban, or with other dictators around the world? Even if you do establish where they have come from, we literally can't get rid of them now. They're here, and the situation will only get worse for all of us. Unfortunately, that is the reality." The Yanks tried to patent cannabis. CBT does help with tons of medical problems, but only THC works on cancer. There was a doctor, I did see a video, scientist, who was doing, I think he was Polish, and he was researching different treatments for cancer, and he had tangible evidence that it was working, and then suddenly his lab was raided by the US pharmaceutical. I forgot what it's called now. I think I'm still tired because I'm forgetting everything. Anyway, they took away everything, took away all of his files, his laptops, everything. And by the end of the process, they had patented everything so that he couldn't do anything. He couldn't do a damn thing. Um, Big Pharma can be very dangerous. I heard Poland doesn't have Muslim immigrants. Are they not in ECHR then? They just won't accept it. They will not be told what to do. They will not be bullied into taking illegal migrants, and they've taken in Ukrainians, but they won't take in illegal migrants, and they won't be bullied into it. And that also goes for Hungary as well. Other countries are gradually capitulating to the threat, either the threat from or being bullied by the rest of the European countries, or by being bought with millions of money, millions of pounds, euros being given to them. Because once again, many of the leaders of these countries, they'll take the money and sell out their own country, and they don't care as long as they make a lot of money. I wish I treated my ADHD with cannabis. At the moment, I'm on Elvance, its speed. Yes, I've also heard that it can work for that too. Yes. FDA, that's the one. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Totally went from my head. And I will private message you and tell you how it works and why it works, Anthony. Thank you very much. I would love to know more. I have looked into it in the past in some ways, but I've totally forgotten it all. It's not something I've had time to do for quite a long time. In the meantime, let's assume that Labour give all these migrants amnesty and distributes them around the country evenly, as Angela Rayner has said. There will be more. The question is, how many more? How many will come over the next year or two? How many will come over the next 5 years? How many will come over the next decade? We're also signed up to the UN Compact for global sustained and continued migration, which again was signed in 2019. I think it was under Boris. If it wasn't under Boris, it was under Theresa, but I think it was under Boris. And currently, there are globally 750 million people that the UN recognizes as refugees. That's aside from the illegal ones. That's aside from legal migration. Just let that sink in. And we have this bunch of amateurs sending out a message that if you come here, we will not only give you amnesty, we'll move you to a nice part of the country and give you a home and give you priority over everybody else. And if anybody dares to complain, we'll call them a xenophobe or a racist, or we'll come up with another word so that they shut up while you come here and basically push the indigenous, the resident population out, because that is what is happening and nobody's doing anything about it. In fact, they're voting for it. Sadly, this is the situation. It's not going to change. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse unless people wake up and smell the coffee before it is too late. Years ago, a story was that 2 Americans found the cure for the common cold and were bought off for millions. The common cold market is worth billions. Yes, indeed it is. Look what happened to Tesla. Uh, he was a brilliant scientist, but he got nowhere because he wanted to uh, give his findings away to benefit the people, and they wouldn't have that. And I think it's Nicholas Tesla, he was a great man and a great scientist, and he came up with some fantastic inventions, but it didn't suit the narrative and it didn't suit the plans of the corporations even back then. You can get cannabis treatment privately with a cannabis card in the UK, or get a script of a doctor in Amsterdam, and you can bring it into the country, but either way it's more expensive. Okay. I live in a posh town in Dorset. It's a very rich manor. Wait and see what all these posh knobs have to say when they turn up in Bournemouth and Sandbanks. They won't go down well. No, but once again, it depends who's connected to who, because distributing them around the country doesn't mean that they're going to go and put them on anywhere near Sandbanks. But they may put them in that county, but it will be near other people, and it will be other people who will struggle to get access to essential services because the numbers have swollen around them, and their local authority will be depleted of even more funds, keeping for these people who are a net loss. They are net takers. They do not contribute. They do not contribute. They bring crime, they bring division, they bring social unrest for the main part. This is the illegals. I've got a Canna card. Okay. I see. Right. Anyway, on that note, with regards to the Rwanda plan, I will be monitoring it very carefully. Just thought I would quickly cover it. I'd like to cover a range of topics, and we will come back to this at some point in the future when we can see the effects, because I believe that it's going to be a busy July and August across the channel, and let's see what this bunch of amateurs actually do about it, because I believe that they're incapable of managing this country effectively for the people, but that's not why they're there. They don't really care about this country. They just care about their politics of resentment, to destroy our culture, probably pull down a lot more Victorian buildings, contribute towards rewriting our history, shaming people, Indigenous people here, apologising for our history, apologising for our flag, promising things to people who support terrorism, and the list goes on and on and on. So that's all for now. I think I will pack up now for a Saturday night and sit and chill. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have any suggestions for topics, although I have scheduled a few, so please feel free to look through the channel and see what I have scheduled for the next 4 or 5 days. And I will see you tomorrow evening, same time. Thank you very much.